Finally, after waiting for almost 2 years for a new Geo character, Navia is here. And in this video, I'll show you her C0 free-to-play damage potential, best teams and builds, and I'll also share my honest thoughts about some of her cons and pros. So if you want to know how strong she is and if it's worth pulling for her, this video will cover all of it. First, I want to show you Navia's damage potential and how her talents work, because there are a couple of tricky things about her. Now for this showcase, she's going to be using the luxurious Sea Lord limited 4-star Claymore, and I know, why would someone fashionable be slapping enemies with a big fish? Well, it's kind of a long story, but to keep it short, her actual best free-to-play weapon is going to be the Overlord Claymore from the 4.3 event, or Title Shadow that you can craft, and they both work really nice on her. However, you will soon witness that even with a small handicap, she still puts out surprising numbers, so moving onwards, the artifact set that she will be equipped with will be the new Nighttime Whispers in the Echoing Woods. The set pieces have roughly average stats here, so overall, you can expect Navia to perform like this when you're gearing her up during the first initial weeks, while later on, I will also show another build that's a lot more highly invested. Finally, my Navia has talents raised to level 9, and of course, she's Constellation 0. Now, the biggest thing about her is that she's sort of a shotgun-style damage dealer, because her Gunbrella doesn't have the longest or widest range, so you'll need to make sure you hit your targets at close range. And in terms of big damage numbers that I'm sure you will see popping up all over the internet, well, you will basically see these bullet stacks called Crystal Shrapnels accumulate next to her, and the more of them she has, the more damage she can deal with her skill. And if you're wondering how she obtains these bullets, well, there's two ways. You can either obtain one stack for each crystallized shard anyone picks up in the team, or when you use Navia's burst, it will then generate a bullet every 2.4 seconds when it hits an enemy. And she can have up to a total of 6 bullet stacks, and I want to show you the difference of damage when you go from 0 to 6 stacks. First, with literally no preparation and just by tapping her skill, you can see she dishes out 42,573 damage. And what's even cooler, you can repeat this for a second time since her skill has 2 charges. And my favorite part, Navia actually generates quite a few particles. It can be either 3 or 4 from a single skill, so do this twice, and she can potentially obtain 6 to 8 particles within seconds. In fact, later I'll even show you an awesome way how to gain even more particles from a single rotation. But basically in terms of energy recharge, you won't even need to worry about it for the most part when you want to build her effectively. But if we go back to her stacks, now I have 3 bullets obtained for her, and if I unleash the skill, it will deal about 83,000 damage, basically almost double the damage compared to 0 stacks. However, there are a few things that I need to clarify here. First of all, when I used her skill at 0 stacks, she didn't have a crystallized shield on her, so that means she's missing out on extra 30% geo damage she could otherwise get from the new Echoing Woods 4 set, since by default it provides 20% geo damage when you use her skill. The other big thing has to do with the amount of extra attack she's utilizing here. The first passive provides up to 40% attack if she has Pyro, Electro, Cryo, Hydro teammates, while another extra 25% attack comes from the Pyro Resonance. I will explain later in Team Comp section why running her with 2 Pyro units will be the most popular method, but overall, I hope you get the picture that even without traditional buffs like Enemy Resistance Shred or Benny's Attack Circle, she's still benefiting from quite a lot of passive attack boosting. But moving over, at 6 bullet stacks, she finally enters the 6-figure club and unleashes roughly 102,000 damage with her skill. Again, no external buffs, just pure raw geo damage, which is pretty amazing. And if we compare these damage checkpoints, 3 bullet stacks damage is about 2 times better than 0, while 6 bullet stack attack is almost 2.5 times better than 0 stacks. And if we compare the 6 stacks against 3 stacks, it's about a total of 23% damage increase. So as you can see, it's super important to make sure Navia has at least 3 stacks before unleashing her skill, since it provides a huge jump in power. But here's another big thing about her. Since she's shooting a gun, you actually need to make sure she hits the enemy. And more importantly, the so-called shard shots that come out of the Gunbrella are a bit spread out, and if you only partially hit the enemy with them, well, they will receive less damage. As you can see here, not all of the outgoing firepower hit the enemy, so it takes less damage. However, if you stand close to the enemy and just tap, or even better, if you hold down the skill, you can enter this aiming mode and position within this reticle to hit the whole body. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal, since you can do a quick hold and perfectly line up the shot quite easily. But sometimes you will want to hold down for a bit longer, because one cool thing about the skill when held down is that in addition to aiming, any nearby crystallized shards also get sucked in by Navia. So literally, she can gain a lot of bullet stacks by just holding down the skill. Oh, and one last thing about her Gunbrella. After using the skill, thanks to her first passive, she will gain Geo Infusion for a short period, basically enough to unleash her whole normal attack combo string once. It's decent damage, ranging from 10,000 to 16,000, and it totals up for about 50k. And I'll soon talk about how you can utilize this attack combo in the next part. Now, finally, we have the Burst. It costs 60 energy, and she commands this cool cannon fire, which will initially deal 6,919 damage, and afterwards, for 12 seconds, cannonballs will periodically drop on enemies in front of the active character, dealing 3,970 damage. And I know, this might initially not look like much, but this burst will deliver a total of 17 hits, or 18 if we count the initial hit, so overall it's about 74,000 damage with no buffs. Obviously, that's still not a lot, but this burst accomplishes the extremely important goal of stocking up Navia with bullet stacks, since, as I said before, she can gain 1 bullet stack every 2.4 seconds when the burst hits, even when she's off-field. Now, when I tested this burst several times, it seems like it provides her with a total of 5 bullet stacks, which is really useful, and furthermore, since this is geo damage, it will also create crystallized shards on the ground when the enemies are affected by other elemental auras. So you can pull off the most powerful shot of her skill when you just use the burst, switch out, wait for it to accumulate some bullets, and come back with a big bang. But that's where the personal damage showcase ends, and in this next part, let's take a look at her fully buffed up rotations, and let's see how much damage she can actually squeeze out of that Gunbrella. Alright, so I'll be utilizing Zhongli, Benny Boy, and Xiangling in order to show you Navia's big damage potential with a free-to-play weapon. There are a total of 3 major buffs that will boost Navia's damage. We've got Benny's massive attack boost, Zhongli's shield that shreds enemies' resistance by 20%, and then there's also Geo Resonance that further increases all of damage by 15%, and most importantly, enemies hit by shielded character have their Geo Resistance reduced by 20%. So in total, that's minus 40% Geo Resistance for enemies, achieving basically the same efficient shredding you could get with Viridescent Venereer Artifact set. Also, Xiangling is actually important here because her Pyronado will help produce crystallized shards when Navia's Geo Burst or skill hits the enemy. And basically, I start off by applying Zhongli's shield, then switch to Navia who quickly uses her skill and then burst, followed by Benny who does his skill and burst, then Xiangling does the same, and finally, I switch back to Navia, which by then should have some bullet stacks from the burst, and maybe a few crystallized shards get picked up. Although, if I notice she doesn't have 6 stacks yet, I hold down her skill, pick up the shards around her, and blast the enemy for massive damage, then quickly unleash her geo-infused normal attacks and do another skill shot, which by then should have at least 3 stacks, and it hits for a ton more damage, and by this point, the poor Drake is dead. But you could still do her geo-infused attacks once more before unleashing her burst and restarting the rotation. Now, as you've noticed, with 6 stacks, she dealt 189,000 damage, and then with 3 stacks, the second skill shot dealt 167,000 damage. Or in total, if we just count Navia's field time, in 11 seconds, she unleashed a total of 638,000 damage, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, this wasn't the smoothest rotation I've done here. I could have sneaked in a couple of more infused normal attacks with her, and potentially picked up 1 or 2 more bullets for her finishing shot here, but overall, it's a pretty satisfying and easy to pull off rotation that still leaves room for improvement when you keep repeating this over and over. Also, you'll notice a big jump in damage that the burst does, going from the initial 3,970 to 9,525. That's because the burst doesn't snapshot. So if you stand with Navia in Benny's circle and activate the Echoing Woods force set, in my case, I was able to massively buff at least 8 of the burst shots. But the best part, this overall damage she outputs could still be a lot better with higher CV artifacts, a better weapon, and of course, better rotation execution. Although all in all, I love the fact you can do a total of 3 skill shots per rotation. This means she can gain on average 10.5 particles, and if you're running her with another Geo character, her energy requirements basically become minimalized, and you could get away with as low as 130% ER. Obviously, this will depend on teammates and their particle generation, but I found it pretty easy to pull off her burst off cooldown. But yeah, compared to her unbuffed damage, that 6-stack bullet shot is about 84% better. Still, I think Navia has a lot of room left for improvement with future characters because, as much as I love Benny Boy, with so much attack that Navia gains, his attack buff is a lot more impactful for characters who have lower attack. Which is why in this next part, I want to talk about Navia's strongest team comps and builds. Just like with every showcase, keep an eye on the bottom of the screen to see the stats and loadouts Navia has. Now, I'll be honest, the current Abyss cycle for this gun-crazy Gunbrella wielder is not favorable. On the first side, you've got several Pyrolectors, while on the other side, Hyperbloom reactions are favored before the last boss. Still, I did manage to discover a couple of really fun teams, and the first one is actually pretty unique. Navia is using here the Sacrificial Greatsword. Yes, there's finally a Geo Claymore character that can make use of this weapon. And basically, you get an extra shot with the skill, which means more particles and more fun damage. However, it's extremely crucial that Navia gets enough crystallized shards funneled to her, so I found Albedo to be a pretty good teammate for her, especially in rooms against multiple enemies, since then, she can open up with double skill shot and burst, wait for the rotation to be set up, and come back and blast the enemies multiple times. I will admit, the rotation can require you to adapt sometimes, but overall, Sacrificial Greatsword in a double Geo Pyro comp with Albedo is a unique and fresh take on quick swap team comps. And I'm sure it's not just Albedo who's good here, so let me know in the comments who else can complement the crystallized shard hungry Navia when she's using the Sacrificial Greatsword. But moving over, a pretty decent free-to-play comp where you don't need 5 stars can be achieved with Benny, Xiangling, and either Geo Traveler or Ningguang. For this showcase, I chose the Traveler because some of the things I've discovered was that his big boulders do not block the outgoing damage of Navia's skill, although it does block the view itself. And since this is the Geo MC we're talking about, I did run into some annoying displacements ranging from minor to really bad. Still, with the new Echoing Woods set, Geo Traveler can put out respectable damage, and because he doesn't take up that much rotation time, you can still have enough time with Navia to utilize Benny's buff. But to change things up, I equipped Navia with the Hunter set because in this team, Farina along with Benny and Xiangling helped me clear the first side of floor 12 pretty easily, thanks to Farina's Hydra application ruining Pyrolectors. But the thing is, without running a second Geo unit, it definitely feels a bit harder to pull off multiple skill shots that have at least 3 bullet stacks, since Navia is the only one who can help produce crystallized shards. Obviously, it's nice that Navia can use Hunter set thanks to Farina, but she does lose out on Geo Resistance Shred from Geo Resonance, and as I said, I wasn't able to produce as many crystallized shards as I would with another Geo unit. Still, this team is pretty strong, especially if you have Hunter set and you still haven't farmed up the new Geo set. However, I was kinda getting tired of Benny and Xiangling constantly being the core for Navia, so I thought, couldn't she just be used in any team where you can have a flexible unit? Well, it turns out she's not that bad in Hyperbloom comps, since often the last spot can be basically anyone. And I actually really liked using her in this team with Nahida, Raiden, and Xingqiu. The way the rotation is set up, Navia has plenty of time to create crystallized shards from each of her Geo infusions she gains. Although with no healing in this team, I would prefer swapping in either Yao Yao, Baiju, or Cookie. And it's also important to keep in mind, Navia doesn't really benefit from any buffing, so expect her skill damage to be much lower than usual. Like, you can see the biggest number even when I'm using Redhorn here, although that's to be expected when you just put her into a team and don't actually build around her. But overall, I would say that the best team that I felt was most comfortable to play, easy to pilot, and could help Navia produce big damage numbers was definitely Zhongli, Benny, and Xiangling. Even with a free-to-play weapon, Tidal Shadow, that I can now showcase when editing the video, she can put out some amazing skill damage. And I would say right now my vertical investment in this team isn't even that huge, so better weapons, better new artifacts will yield even better results. So, what do I think about Navia? Is she enough to save Geo? Honestly, she feels pretty good, and the fact that her biggest damage potential relies on the amount of crystallized shards the team needs to pick up is an interesting twist to this otherwise mediocre reaction. The problem, however, is that right now there aren't that many teams that you can build around her. Like, literally, Benny and Xiangling is the core you want to use if you want to see those big numbers, while the last slot can be any other character. I mean, sure, if you don't care about boosting her damage super effectively, you could just put her into any team since she can technically build up shards from her burst, but this severely reduces her potential. And speaking of which, I don't know about other content creators, but I found her to be the most enjoyable with another Geo character because on her own, especially against only one enemy, she runs out of steam after one shot, and that shot had to be powered up by the burst. Also, I don't like the fact that her best set, and really the only viable set besides Hunters with Farina, is the new Echoing Woods. If you pull for her, this will be the set that you'll need to farm if you actually want the best damage. So say goodbye to your resin for the next coming months. Still, I think Geo is starting starting to move in the right direction. And I really hope Hoyo decides to release more characters from this element, and I hope it doesn't take 2 more years for this to happen. But yeah, if you think you can get behind this shotgun in your face playstyle that generates big numbers, then you'll probably enjoy using Navia. But keep in mind, at the end of the day, she does require specific team members and artifacts to achieve peak performance. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting, and I would really be grateful if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.